Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Natalie and today I am gonna go through all my enemies to lovers book recommendations. Some of these I've read a long time ago, but for the most part they're all books that I enjoyed and books that if someone asked me like, Natalie, like what would you recommend? I really want to read an enemies to lovers. These are probably the ones that I would go to and recommend depending on what someone enjoys reading. So yeah. So one of the enemies to lovers for me is Icebreaker by Hannah Grace, and I really enjoyed this book and I thought it was really good. I felt like it was a nice easy read as well, like fun, and yeah, I really enjoyed the book. I've got Anastasia, which is a figure skater, and Nate, who plays hockey. Ice hockey, is it specifically that you say? I don't know, but oh yeah, because hockey you can play on a field or on ice hockey. And they end up having to share the same rink at university because something that someone else on the hockey team done. So they was enemies based off of like that, and then they became lovers obviously. But yeah, you see that Anastasia becomes a bit dependent on like Nate, and really relies on him. So seeing them build that trust is really cute. But also you see one of Anastasia's like figure skating partners. He's a weirdo, so you get to see that whole story, which I think is a nice interesting part of it. And him and Nate have like their own bit of conflict as well, so super interesting. But yeah, I'd highly recommend the book. It's a nice spicy one as well. And yeah, they're really kind of cheeky in it. So yeah, I loved it and I would definitely recommend that, enemies to lovers. So my next one is The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata, and this is with Vanessa and Aiden. Yeah, and Aiden, and this is a slow burn. Like, it's such a big book and it's such a slow burner as well, but it is, I really enjoyed it. I know a lot of people don't, because you don't see them even hug until about, how many pages are there? There's like, I don't even know. There's a lot of pages in this book. There's like 600, almost 700 pages. You don't see them hug until like page 630. Like, there's no form of intimacy in this book until right at the end, which I know a lot of people complain about, but at the same time, like, I didn't mind it. It was still really nice to read. But in this, Vanessa's like his like assistant and stuff, like live-in assistant, and helps sort out like his meals and all that sort of stuff. But Aiden's always liked her, but he's just so like grumpy with her, and she just doesn't think he likes her at all. But the whole time he's been like in love with her. She gets along a lot more with his roommate. And then you just kind of see the changes and how he defends her and sticks up for her against his manager person or something like that. But yeah, this one's really good, a nice long read, but I found it interesting. I mean, maybe it could be wrapped up quicker, but I didn't need it to be. Like, it was really nice. But yeah, when they end up together, it is cute at the end. So Wall of Winnipeg and Me, I'd highly recommend from my own personal point of view. And then we have Dear Enemy by Kristen Callahan, and I love this book so much, and I think I'm probably going to reread this actually, like when I go on holiday. This book is so good and I'm still obsessed with it till this day. In this one you've got, I don't remember names, so let me find the names. Okay, Macon and Delilah. So Delilah's sister steals something from Macon, and she is trying to like pay him back through her service of living with him and helping him, because I think he like got like hurt himself, so she's trying to pay him back through that so he doesn't call the police on her sister. And she's also trying to get her sister to return the item, but they're enemies from a childhood. I think he said something to her when they was really young that stuck with her. And at the same time, I really don't want to remember this book because I do want to reread it, but yeah, he said something when I was younger that really stuck with her, that hurt her, and they were enemies ever since. So she didn't like him since that, and yeah, so enemies to lovers. But in it, like from them being together so much, of course it's such close proximity, you're gonna end up catching feelings somehow, so their sexual attraction is there, and then they act on it, and oh, it's just, honestly, I highly recommend reading this one. This is one of my favorites, and I feel like this is one of the first like truly sort of spicy books that I ever read, but it's just so good. Like, even how Kristen describes things in her books, like, I think it's really detailed. Like, you genuinely can imagine something. If they're eating something, you can imagine what it tastes like. If they're touching something, you can imagine what it feels like. Like, she's so good at describing and setting a scene that I would highly recommend her anyway, just based off of her writing style being so good. So Dear Enemy is like 10 out of 10, like 10/10 for me. Okay, and Shock Restore Me by J.L. Seegars. I feel like I've spoken about this book so much in like the past 2 months, but it's such a good book. But yeah, it's such a good book that, yeah, I'd highly recommend. But as an enemies to lovers, like, specifically, I thought it was really good. So you have Sloane and Dominic, and Sloane got with Dominic's best friend, so she's always thought that he hated her, so they never spoke, never got along. Whenever she'd be at like her mother-in-law's house and Dominic would come, like, they wouldn't speak. Like, you could just tell they did not like each other. And then she learns that he has never hated her, and you kind of learn their backstory behind it. But overall, like, I think the enemies to lovers in this is one of the books where I can say it actually makes sense how they were enemies. Like, there's a lot of books when I read enemies to lovers and afterwards I'm like, so why were they enemies in the beginning? Like, I don't really understand it. Or it's like, okay, we're saying it's enemies to lovers, but the way everything sounds before the lovers part, it doesn't give like an enemies type of vibe. It just gives like maybe like a couple disagreements, but that's not an enemy. But in this one, I feel like the whole enemies to lovers is like, this is enemies to lovers like personified. And yeah, like, everything about it makes sense, and I think the natural progression between them makes sense. The natural like understanding of from like the backstory is also good. But again, like, this is another one where the writing is just so good that I would recommend it regardless. But yeah, this one was really good. So Restore Me by J.L. Seegars also makes the list, and I think that was my last one too. So yeah. So that is all of the enemies to lovers that I would recommend. And also, I feel like I'm really seeing like my growth in my reading, because before, if you said to me like, recommend enemies to lovers, I'm like, what is it called, The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. But now, like, I'm really growing into like the books I like, and I love that for me. But yeah, this is a really good selection of books, I feel like, for an enemies to lovers. I'm just finishing off finally Twisted Games, and that one I would probably also add into my enemies to lovers as well. Recommendations once I get all the way to the end and I see. But for the time being, I said this in the last video as well, but for the time being, like, I would also add that to the list. That is all the recommendations I have for enemies to lovers. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that if you do end up reading any of these, that you enjoy the books. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Bye.